knows we need border security. We need a wall. I think it's a very bad subject for the Democrats.
We have 654 miles of fencing already out of 1,994 miles of the border.
There is no emergency at the border. It's a mythology of the president. The wall is not effective.
We're trying to promote the Green New Deal.
I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing.
Dow's 9-week winning streak is the longest in nearly 24 years.
Battle music star R. Kelly is expected in court today after turning himself into police overnight. He's behind bars in Chicago on 10 counts of criminal sexual abuse charges. The owner of the New England Patriots is charged with soliciting sex. Bob Kraft allegedly videotaped paying prostitutes in Florida.
Isn't 10 million enough? At what point is it immoral? Maybe we shouldn't be eating a hamburger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
If socialism, vegetarianism, and reparations are the campaign theme for the eventual Democratic nominee, it sounds like Donald Trump will win.
President Trump and Kim Jong-un impersonators are detained in Vietnam ahead of the U.S.-North Korea summit. After a long investigation, we have a suspect in the big egg scandal of my breakfast being stolen. There's now a suspect that we have. I'm not sure, but I think I can forgive him for doing that. He's
he gets off on the cuteness defense for sure.
Cute and fluffy defense is a good one.
I don't know. I say innocent.
I don't know. I say we give him the chair. No, it's horrible. Just so you know, somebody stole Katie Pavlich's hard-boiled eggs. That's what that all was all about.
Yeah.
So from that news to something that's actually really, really, really serious and seriously serious, Fox News confirming Robert Mueller's report will not be released while President Trump is at his second North Korea summit in Vietnam.
This coming as the showdown over the president's national emergency heats up in Washington.
That's where we find Garrett Tinney joining us live with more on the president's plans to veto a Democratic effort on that resolution. Garrett, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, y'all. So a lot of folks have been saying for more than a year now that the special counsel's investigation is coming to a close, but that may now actually be the case. A source familiar with the special counsel's investigation told Fox News this week that it is near the end game. However, a senior official at the Justice Department tells us they are not expecting to receive their Mueller report next week, saying any reporting that special counsel Mueller's report will be delivered to the Department of Justice next week are incorrect. On Friday, President Trump was asked if he's discussed the release of the Mueller report with newly confirmed Attorney General William Barr.
Everybody knows we need border security. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no anything. So that's the nice part. There was no phone calls, no nothing. I won a race. You know why I won the race? Because I was a better candidate than she was and had nothing to do with Russia. And everybody knows it's a hoax. It's one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on this country. So I look forward to seeing the report. If it's an honest report, it will say that.
While the Mueller report is not expected to be released next week while the president is in Vietnam, House Democrats are planning to try and block his national emergency declaration to build the border wall. A piece of legislation to do that is expected to easily pass the House on Tuesday before it heads to the GOP-controlled Senate, where Republicans will face a lot of pressure to back up President Trump. However, even if it passes the Senate and heads to the White House, the president has said he will absolutely veto the legislation if it comes to his desk. Back to y'all.
All right.
Garrett Tinney, thank you.
We'll be talking about that. It'll be interesting to see what the Senate does.
Yeah. Which Republicans, I think, will come over.
Susan Collins is one.
Mike Lee, even, who has said this he believes it's legal based on what Congress has ceded to the executive branch in terms of power, but he does believe that it's unconstitutional.
And Lisa Murkowski as well. Look for her to...
But do you think that that's honestly what they truly believe, or is this just a concession because they're those on-the-fence GOP senators?
Right. Well, the president hopefully will not have to veto that while he's overseas in Vietnam for the summit next week with Kim Jong-un. This is the second summit that they will be having to talk about denuclearization of North Korea. So that is something the president has on his plate for next week. And also with the Mueller report, we also have breaking news on that it will be released at some point, but it will not be next week. In the future sometime, it will end up being released.
And actually, the Attorney General Barr doesn't even have it. We've that confirmation.
Let's let him take a look at it first. I think that would be a smart call. Obviously, we've been talking about the Green New Deal for a couple of weeks now, talking about how this may not be financially feasible because it requires trillions upon trillions of dollars. Well, a bunch of kids decided to confront Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat, in her office about what they perceived as a lack of her support for the Green New Deal. They came armed with some memorized lines, and here's what all went down.
We're trying to promote the Green New Deal.
Well, there are reasons why I can't, because there's no way to pay for it. You just can't go in and say, okay, we're going to take
hundreds of millions from here and hundreds of millions from there. It just doesn't work that way.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if this doesn't get turned around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality, and I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
I wonder if the kids know what plurality means, but that video and the organization of those children was done by the Sunrise Movement, which is an organization that is dedicated to building an army of young people to make climate change an urgent priority across America. So Dianne Feinstein, I think, handled it pretty well, considering she is the adult. And these are children, and they do have concerns, but they are children.
And an important voice, but, you know, she's getting some flack for it. Let me put up a tweet from someone you may remember, Brian Fallon. Now, he's a former Clinton campaign spokesman. He's talking about this. He says, the kids in the Die-Fi video rightfully don't give an expletive about PAYGO or 60-vote thresholds in the Senate. They just want to confront climate change. If you're running for president this year, you better see the world through the kids' eyes, not Die-Fi's.
All right.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's not very nice.
Here's what Dianne had to say about all this in response. She goes, I want the children from the Sunrise Movement to know they were heard loud and clear. I have been and remain committed to doing everything I can to enact real, meaningful climate change legislation. But you mentioned earlier, you know, these kids came in there with scripted lines. And let's remember, every time you see a union protest, 75 to 80% of the people that are out there protesting are paid.
Right.
When you go see one of these Antifa protests, a lot of those guys are being paid by organizations to go out there. These kids may or may not be getting paid. We don't know, but it's clear these kids were set up with talking points to go in there and do this. We all agree. We all live on this earth. We don't want it to go away, but it's not financially realistic to do it all in 10 years. We need to come up with solutions, but that's just more lunacy.
Well, that's the point, right? If now the choice is, if you're not for the Green New Deal, you're against the environment, and you're not willing to address environmental issues. That's just not true. And even if you're someone who is a Democrat who believes in climate change, you can look at the Green New Deal and say, this is not the way to go about real meaningful efforts to actually clean up the environment, and will destroy the U.S. economy along the way. But I do know that kids like hamburgers, and in the Green New Deal, you're not allowed to eat hamburgers at all. So
I'm not okay with
I don't know if they know about that, but I think they might be against it if they learn about that. Salads you are allowed to eat in the Green New Deal. Mostly because
we
they're
need to get to that story.
Are you ready? Well, if we're going to be talking salads, if you'll excuse me, I need to get out my comb.
Okay.
And you're probably
Why
like,
is that?
what are we talking about? Well, it turns out the Minnesota Senator, Amy Klobuchar, or Klobuchar, depending upon how you want to say it. We've talked about how she got in a little bit of trouble for being too mean, too caustic with her staff over the course of her many years in politics. Well, there's a new New York Times article called How Amy Klobuchar Treats Her Staff, and it reads as follows. Here's the relevant quote. She pulled a comb from her bag and began eating the salad with it, according to 4 people familiar with the episode.
Yuck.
Thank you. Thank you, Toba. Then she handed the comb to her staff member with a directive, clean it.
Okay, but the reason why this happened is because her staffer failed to bring on the proper plastic utensils to eat the salad.
They fell.
So they fell.
They fell on the ground.
So she got upset that she didn't have anything to eat it with, and she ate it with a comb, allegedly. And you know what? She's innovative.
Listen, exactly.
They should eat with their hands.
I mean, there's some real initiative right there. So she's running late. She has a crazy schedule. She's starving to death. Probably hadn't eaten all day.
Right.
Which is why she was
gets
upset.
on this plane with the salad. She just wants to eat it. She's like, what have I got? What can I do? Reaches in her purse, and like you, I've got a utensil.
Oh, you got one too.
I can find something to
We're
sleep with.
prepared
We're all
for
prepared with
salads.
anchor props.
Then the fault is that she asked the staffer, could you clean it? Now, you know, in fairness, those moments of being on the road, being on the run, doing whatever, I'm not sure this amounts to being worthy of a front page New York Times article that says how horrible this person is.
But to Katie's point, none of this happens if we're allowed to just eat hamburgers all the time.
Well,
so
and they
another
should be
reason
praising her for
against
being
the Green New Deal.
sustainable and reusing her plastic comb instead of throwing away a plastic fork.
All right. Meanwhile, turning to this, 3 high-profile celebrities are finding themselves in trouble with the law this morning.
Todd is breaking down the legal drama, beginning with the bombshell overnight. Todd.
Yeah, obviously yesterday, if you were watching TV, the world just blew up with sex cases. We begin with R. Kelly. There he is, R. Kelly, behind bars on 10 criminal sex abuse charges involving underage girls. The disgraced music star turning himself in to Chicago police overnight on accusations dating back to 1998. The embattled singer is accused of assaulting 4 women, at least 3 of which were between the ages of 13 and 17. Kelly's lawyer claims all the women are lying.
2 of the cases are super old, not accurate, not true. He's going to be vindicated on all these charges, one by one if it has to be.
All these felony charges coming just weeks after Lifetime released that documentary everybody's talking about, detailing several sex abuse allegations against Kelly. He has repeatedly denied similar accusations. R. Kelly's going to make his first court appearance later today. He's facing up to 70 years in prison. Now to another big story everybody's talking about. The New England Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, now facing 2 solicitation charges in Jupiter, Florida. The billionaire businessman allegedly videotaped paying prostitutes on cameras planted by police at a Florida spa. A spokesperson for Kraft releasing a statement that says, quote, arrest is expected this week. So much happening just on a Friday in areas that we didn't even think were going to be happening. And we can't forget about Jussie Smollett, of course, the wild story there. The actor now being removed from the final 2 episodes of Empire. This, as he claims, he has an unrelated drug problem, now free on a $100,000 bond. Who thought that yesterday the 2 big stories about famous people in the news were not going to involve Jussie Smollett?
I find it interesting that you can blame creating an alleged hate crime on a drug problem, but we'll see how much that pans out and how much sympathy he gets for
It'll
that.
be fascinating to see how much of this continues on the 2020 campaign trail because of the attack on the MAGA hat.
Well, and you have Kamala Harris,
Did she remove
Cory
her tweet
Booker. They haven't removed their tweets, and they really haven't been commenting a whole lot about initially saying this was a modern-day lynching attempt, et cetera, and now they seem to be kind of pushing it away under the rug and trying to move on from it as they continue on the campaign.
What's going to be interesting is to see what happens between now and the time that they pick their individual who's going to be running, because there's going to be something in the news that's going to warrant a knee-jerk reaction. Yeah. It's going to be curious to see who does that knee-jerk and who steps back.
All right, well, Bernie Sanders raising
toast to the Michael Knowles Show. Michael Knowles. Michael, I guess you're not feeling the burn.
I'm not feeling the burn. I think people have amnesia. They're forgetting that 12 years ago, Ron Paul raised exactly the same amount of money in exactly the same amount of time, $6 million in 24 hours. As you will recall, Ron Paul never won the GOP presidential nomination. Bernie Sanders will not win the Democrat nomination. The problem for Bernie is that he's a victim of his own success. Bernie Sanders has so successfully radicalized the Democrat Party, brought it over to the extreme left, had it redefine itself along socialist lines, that now the question is, if every other candidate in the field is spouting the same sort of things that Bernie Sanders does, then why would anybody vote for Bernie Sanders, especially today in a Democrat Party that is obsessed with identity politics? Right. If you've got the same radicalism from everybody, why would you vote for the fairly ancient old white guy?
So, Michael, that's the big question. Every candidate is going to try and define themselves. Bernie Sanders is the original socialist. You have people like Kamala Harris saying, I'm not a democratic socialist. But the question now is, where is Bernie Sanders' lane? A Fox News poll recently showed when you look at socialism versus capitalism, 57% have a favorable opinion of capitalism, and just 25% have a favorable opinion of socialism. So can Bernie Sanders really win not just a primary, but a general election when the majority of the country is staunchly against what he's proposing?
Unfortunately for Democrats, the party is so corrupt that they'll probably just rig it again and keep Bernie Sanders out of the election. What really helped Bernie in 2016 is that he was running as the anti-Hillary vote. So he opposed Hillary Clinton and all of her empty promises and all of her wickedness. But today, of course, there are so many other options. If he makes it through, those numbers seem favorable. The majority of the country is not yet socialist. But when you look at the Democrat base, and when you look especially at millennials, the numbers really start to turn. True. Socialism is resurgent. This is a great testament to Bernie Sanders' regressive politics and regressive ideology. But in a general election, I think it's a loser for Democrats.
I don't know, though. Here's a problem with your argument, Michael, and that's this. Sanders won 23 primaries and caucuses last go-around, and he was pretty much robbed of it because of the DNC. People are still anti-establishment, so why do you say he won't at least give every other person in this giant field a run for their money?
Because he was running against one of the most despised candidates in all of American history and a perfect mediocrity in Martin O'Malley. Today we have Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, so many other far better candidates who will be speaking to the same people that Bernie does. I think they'll have much more success.
Well, Michael Knowles, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Good to see you.
And a state senator trashing the American flag, comparing Old Glory to a swastika. His colleague, a veteran, giving an emotional response defending Old Glory. He joins us next.
For those of us that have brought home those that we've lost, it's hard to ever refer to the flag as a wreck.
For some quick headlines for you, President Trump nominating U.S. Ambassador to Canada Kelly Knight Craft to be the next UN ambassador. The president tweeting in part, Kelly has done an outstanding job representing our nation, and I have no doubt that under her leadership, our country will be represented at the highest level. She will replace Nikki Haley, who resigned last year. And the former American Marine accused of spying in Russia speaks out for the first time since he was arrested in December.
Are you okay? Yeah. I could do with care packages, food, things like that. Letters from home. No. Any supporters? Letters?
Paul Whelan will stay behind bars for at least 3 more months after a Moscow court extended his detention. He denies all accusations against him. And police have identified the man suspected of punching a conservative activist at UC Berkeley. The man has not been arrested, and his name has not been released. Video of the assault is going viral, with conservative groups calling it a leftist attack. Todd?
Nebraska State Senator Ernie Chambers facing backlash this morning after calling the American flag a rag and comparing it to the Nazi swastika. Chambers saying in part, quote, that it is definitely not. Fellow State Senator Tom Brewer, who spent over 30 years in the military, had an emotional response to Chambers' remarks.
For those of us that have brought home those that we've lost, it's hard to ever refer to the flag as a wreck because you have to fold it and you have to give it to the parents. It's awful hard to do.
Joining me now, Nebraska Republican State Senator Tom Brewer. Mr. Brewer, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this morning. The majority of Americans do not serve their country, but I think we all had the same visceral reaction to that statement by Mr. Chambers that you had. But you served 8 tours in Iraq. You had to bring home 3 of your own. What's going through your mind when you hear Mr. Chambers' comments?
Well, he starts in the morning with his distaste for the Pledge of Allegiance and the morning prayer, and then as the day goes on and debates happen, it's one of the issues that he does despise, and that's the flag and patriotism, and it chewed away my soul, and there was a point I couldn't hold the emotion back anymore, and I think that's kind of what caused that moment.
But this isn't the only time we've heard something like this in recent memory. There are a number of individuals, and quite frankly, it's dated back to the Vietnam War, who do not respect Old Glory. When you see all that in the aggregate, as somebody who has served our nation and who has given so much and has seen people give so much, what's going on in our country?
Now, there is a lack of respect. The respect isn't just for the flag, but for individuals. You know, there was a point where someone who was senior to you, you always held a degree of respect, and you said sir or ma'am, and we're in an age where it's almost like everything has been turned upside down, and there's enough hate and there's enough of a lack of understanding of our history and how we got to where we're at. And because of that, they don't show the respect that they should to individuals or the flag.
All right. We reached out to State Senator Ernie Chambers' office for a statement. We were not able to reach anyone. And Mr. Brewer, I can only think, who does Mr. Chambers think his freedom is provided from? By. It's unbelievable, all the sacrifices that individuals like yourself go through, and people like Mr. Chambers just don't get it. Tom Brewer, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
A new meaning to the word freeze for one deputy, how he's winning over some kids but losing in a game of freeze tag with them. And 3 top Democratic presidential candidates signaling support for reparations. Of course, for African Americans, but other groups as well. Elizabeth Warren says Native Americans should be part of the game too. David Webb here to react. Hi, David. Next. They taste like Fruit Loops. I mean, you guys win. Well done.
We're not supposed to eat on camera, but okay.
I got to tell you, too, Carl's Jr., a West Coast establishment we're talking about, as a server. It spends time in California. I love Carl's Jr.
What do you get?
I get a cheeseburger.
I get the one with the onion ring and the barbecue sauce and the bacon.
Oh,
spectacular.
So
and now I'm going to get the donuts. Clearly, a good mashup.
It's a good sugar morning.
Well, now we have our sugar high. Let's get to some of the news of the day with David Webb. Welcome again to the couch. Look, our friend Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee is telling Republicans that they need to kind of come clean about what they're saying. Listen to this and we'll get your reaction.
People will stop me in the corridor, Republicans, and say, keep doing what you're doing.
Really?
Even senior Republicans, which of course would be heresy for them to say publicly, I don't need private confidences, misgivings anymore. We need public statements. We need people to take a stand. We need people to vote their conscience.
Imagine if our production staff run the Mueller probe. It would have been done after 10 minutes. They just cleared out our table like that.
But I kept mine.
Yeah,
I'm not giving up mine.
Do you actually believe Adam Schiff when he says Republicans are stopping me in the dark corners and halls of Congress to tell me that I'm doing the right thing?
No. Show me the videotape. Kind of like Jussie Smollett. Where's the videotape? Adam Schiff is the leader of the resistance for his part. I'm not going to believe him, and it serves the Democrats to separate the Republicans by planting a narrative. And one thing the Democrats and the party's good at, false narratives. So if you show me the videotape, I'll believe you.
All right. Well, we'll have to see if there's any videotape in the halls of Congress of that.
Yeah, I do. I got to get to this. Now, for a guy in radio, and I remember back in the 90s when I was doing radio, reparations was the thing that we heard about, and then that idea went away. We haven't heard that in a long time. Now, all of a sudden, with this 2020 field growing, we're hearing for the first time about calls bringing back the idea of reparations. This is a montage I want to play for you of 3 of those wannabe presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Julian Castro. Listen.
History of racism. We need to confront it head on.
We have a history of racism in America. People aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up.
This country would be better off if we did find a way to do that because of the injustice. What that would look like, I can't say that I have that all figured out, but I do believe that the country would be better off.
Now, David, I know you're a white guy with white privilege.
Hey, I'm owning my white privilege from now.
About reparations for African Americans.
I have to pay. First of all, while I was back in college, because Kamala and I are the same age, and I was smoking pot, listening to Tupac. I'm sorry, I was in grammar school then. No, first of all, that's offensive to anyone. I also am Jamaican, and you have no idea how PO'd I am at that. This is pure pandering. Think about some of the states like the Carolinas and others where the black vote matters. It did for Obama, especially in the primaries. They're pandering to something that will never happen. Blacks, you're being lied to if you believe that at any moment, any one of them will deliver reparations to you. It's not going to happen.
I mean, does reparations
means
actually
nothing.
move the country forward, or does that actually just fuel division in the country?
File it under it means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. We as a country have moved forward. We have overturned the blight of racism. We have dealt with so many issues in this country, and they want to drag us back because what does it solve, to your question? It solves nothing.
Is it laying a trap then for supporters of Trump that would say if you're not for it, then perhaps you're racist?
You know, under President Trump, the best form of reparation has been laid out. The best way out of poverty is a job. When you look at the employment rate in this country, when you look at teenage employment, very important to starter jobs, black women, black males, college graduates, people of all ethnicities, because I don't like separating them, but let's deal with the identity politics. When you look at those numbers, the available jobs and the term in job, the time spent in the job, the ability to be in a job longer, that is the best form of reparation to move forward.
Okay, but forget Trump supporters. Let's just go to white people in general. If I, as a white person, say, that's not a great idea, don't I run the risk of being labeled racist? And that includes white people who are running in the 2020 Democratic primary.
Well, if you don't have what it takes to stand up and say, I am not, that simple phrase when someone calls you a racist, then don't run for the presidency. If someone calls you, whoever you are in life, if somebody calls you something and you're not, stand up for it. Stop giving in to other people's descriptions of who you are. These politicians are risk-averse cowards who pander to anyone they want. It's part of politics. That's how it works. And unfortunately, too many, some of them on the Republican side, just as well do that.
Well, you can catch David and more of his thoughts on Fox Nation's Reality Check. We appreciate you spending your morning with us. Thank you.
Anytime. And I got my Fruit Loops.
Got your donuts. Got your breakfast.
Carl's Jr., baby.
Good.
Thanks, David.
All right, turning now to your headlines. The CEO of Time's Up is stepping down following sexual misconduct allegations against her son. Lisa Borders resigning from her post at the Gender Equality Initiative just 24 hours after the accusations surfaced. Borders expressing deep regret, writing in a statement she's leaving to address family concerns. And Senator Bernie Sanders feeling the heat over these controversial comments.
Is Nicolás Maduro a dictator, Senator, for you?
I think clearly he has been very, very abusive. That is a decision of the Venezuelan people.
The 2020 presidential candidate angering the left for refusing to condemn disputed Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. Florida Democrats saying, quote, they are dumbfounded by his comments. Netflix subscribers are shockingly letting their shared accounts last longer than their relationships. 13% of adults use an ex's account, according to a new study by a media company, Extremist. It also shows that 17% use a current boyfriend or girlfriend's account without paying. The survey polled nearly 900 people who don't live with the subscriber. And a Texas deputy's sweet game of tag with kids caught on camera. He may have lost, but he won them over.
This? Oh, I gotta freeze you. Unfreeze you though, right? Unfreeze. He's pretty light on his feet for an old guy. Watch out.
The Texas deputy testing his skills when he saw the children waving at him after a traffic stop. And those are your headlines. That's always fun.
I still can't get over the Netflix thing.
I mean, yeah, right? I guess it's harder to break up with it. Can you please stop using my account? We're just not doing that anymore.
Is that a part of modern dating these days, that you got to, like, not only break up, but you've got to make sure that they don't?
You're looking at the wrong people.
You just have to change your password. That's the easy out.
All right. It's hot in here. Let's just call it what it is. I am literally sweating through my suit, but I don't want to be the guy who complains about weather. So we're going to let Rick Reichmuth just tell you what the weather is.
Just come on outside for about 20 seconds.
Understood.
And you'll be over it. So much going on in the weather world this week. Flooding and incredible snow. Take a look at the map, show you what's going on. A big story down across parts of the South. If you're across parts of Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, you know what I'm talking about. You've had nothing but rain for the better part of a week and really big flooding along with that. That flooding is going to continue. You see where that red is? That's flash flooding that is going on right now. That's also the exact same spot that later on today we have the threat for some very potentially large tornadoes tornadoes. So if you might normally know your roads out to get to a safer structure, do that earlier in the day today, because a lot of the roads are flooded and there's going to be big problems. Where you see those hatch marks, that's where we have that threat for the larger, longer-lived tornadoes, likely starting around 4 to 5 o'clock tonight, so watch for that. Also, that's one story, that flooding, but take a look at this. So much going on the map. We have blizzard warnings in effect across parts of Colorado all the way up through Minnesota. It's the same storm that brought all of that snow across parts of Arizona yesterday and the day before. Here's your temps today. Very warm down across parts of the southeast still. All right, guys, back to you inside.
Switch. I'll do weather outside so I can cool down, and then you can come in here and talk about this. All right, Rick, thank you. A 10-year-old girl died just one day after being diagnosed with the strep throat and the flu. Just a horrible story. Should we be worried, though, about the flu? The doctor's in. Coming up.
Plus, the stock market.
Good morning.
Hi. A teen goes to jail after calling 911 on himself. Police say the 18-year-old demanded his own arrest for getting drunk at his home in Arkansas. Officers admitting it was a very strange arrest. They let him sober up behind bars before releasing him. He's charged with public intoxication. And this crook trading rare coins for a fraction of their worth. 40-year-old Shane Anthony Mel stealing at least $33,000 worth of commemorative coins from a friend. He later told Palm Beach police he sold some coins for a few $1,000, then dropped the rest into a Coinstar. He's now facing a grand theft charge.
Fox Business Network. Susan, thanks for being here. I thought we were in a recession in 2019.
Yeah, we heard the R word. So my message this morning is it's okay to open your 401ks once again, because in December there were so many jitters. People were concerned about the retirement savings, but we're up 9 straight weeks. Best start to the year in 24 years, longest winning streak, and best start to the year for the broader markets in 30 years. So you made basically most of the losses back in 1 month. Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's great. And then we also have a lot of job openings as well. It seems like there's more jobs, 6 million openings. Right. What's that mean for the stock market, but also the employment market?
Well, it also means it's a great economy at this point. We had the Federal Reserve, the central bank, basically saying that this week, and there's a lot going right now for America. So we have a great jobs market, best in 50 years. In fact, there's a 1 million job gap, meaning the amount of people looking for work versus the jobs available. They can't even find the extra million to fill them, believe it or not.
Would you say that going forward over the course of the next 10 months, whether this market is up or whether it's down, is all going to come down to China?
I would say there's a lot of factors. I wouldn't say China is the main one. Actually, I think the Federal Reserve basically saying we're not going to raise interest rates. The China trade, everyone's expecting something to be done by March 1st. And companies are making more money than expected. Those are the 3 factors rallying markets so far.
Susan, you mentioned jobs, and so immediately my brain drifted to some billboards that have been going up.
They're big.
And that is jobs that targeted Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let me show you. Here's the first one. Hey, OC, saw your whack tweet. So the billboard says 25,000 lost New York City jobs, $4 billion in lost wages, $12 billion in lost economic activity for New York. Thanks for nothing, AOC.
And she responded. She did not like that. And she said, few things effectively communicate the power we've built in fighting dark money and anti-worker policies like billionaire-funded groups blowing tons of cash on whack billboards. This one is funded by the Mercers. P.S. The fact that it's in Times Square tells you this isn't for and by New Yorkers. So after that, they put up another billboard because they said that we saw your tweet. Right. So what is this back and forth here?
It's a back and forth. Yeah, $4,000 a week. They say it's well worth it because you cost us $4 billion in lost wages. And there's a great op-ed piece in the Washington Post by Mark Thiessen, who's a contributor here at Fox. He says that AOC's economic illiteracy, not only bad when it comes to jobs, but bad for the country as well. Because she doesn't understand that you didn't save New York City $3 billion. You cost the city $27 billion when it comes to tax revenue. And by the way, there's a $2.5 billion shortfall in the state. What about 40,000 jobs? I mean, those folks in the local economy, people who are building restaurants, as you mentioned, Griff, expecting Amazon to come here, what are they going to do now? It's lost investments, you know, people who can't find jobs, and it's very sad.
What's so fascinating about this Amazon situation made New York Governor Andrew Cuomo basically a Republican for the last 3 weeks. And it made de Blasio a Republican for about a week until he sort of backtracked and said, said, oh, now it's Amazon's fault. You know, they didn't want to talk to us.
It took their ball away, didn't want to play, right? Even though he negotiated the deal, de Blasio. But you're right. Now it's the governor, Cuomo, now blasting the progressives, saying, what are you doing? I can actually negotiate better with Republicans, and I thought I could negotiate with Democrats, but apparently I can't.
Sign of the times.
Interesting dots connect there. The economy is doing better than ever, and some candidates are anti-pro-business.
That's exactly. We don't need that right now.
Well, Susan Lee from the Fox Business Network, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, this fourth-grade girl died just one day after being diagnosed with strep throat and the flu. Dr. Nicole Saphier is here with the symptoms to look for in your kids. Up next.
Plus, a football legend turned baseball star. I got the chance to visit one-on-one with the one and only Tim Tebow at Mets spring training. His inspirational message on baseball and faith. That's coming up next hour.
Just one day after being diagnosed with both strep throat and the flu. So should we still be worried about the flu season? Here now is Fox News medical contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier. Wow, sad, terrible story. We're still in the throes of it. How worried should we be? What happened here?
Well, Griff, great seeing you this morning. Thanks for having me. It's flu season, and flu season comes once a year. And even though people are saying this is a more mild season, that's all relative because it just means that maybe it's less than it was last year. It doesn't mean that it's a great season. So as you mentioned, this young child recently died from the flu, but we have now 41 children who have died just this season alone from the flu. And what we're seeing, we're switching now from the strain H1N1 and we're going to H3N2, which tends to be more severe, and that's where we see more deaths associated. So right now, it's not too late to prevent the flu. When you have a child, anyone over 6 months of age should still be getting the flu shot. Adults too. And especially, you're not necessarily doing it to keep yourself safe. You're doing it to keep those around you safe.
Got to get the shot or the flu mist for kids right in your noses. Let me show you quickly. You mentioned the stats. If you look at the flu season 2018 to 2019, as you mentioned, 41 child deaths linked to flu, 6 to 7 million people sick. In that map, we had 30 states have reported high flu activities. I didn't get a flu shot. Should I run out and get one?
Yes, absolutely. It is not too late. By getting your flu shot, you are protecting those around you. Listen, most people recover from the flu. Children, adults, you get the flu, you have a pretty bad illness, 3 to 5 days, and most people recover. But there are cases where it gets more severe and it can result in death. You had over 80,000 people die from the flu last year alone, about 185 children. Okay, so this is serious. So when all of a sudden you see, when you see a child or someone who has the flu, it is a good idea to go to the doctor because we have antiviral medications that can lessen the severity.
And just because parents will be watching this very worried if they have a sick child right now, in the sad case of Sable Gibson, she got the flu strep, she woke up, had cardiac arrest and died. What should parents be doing right now if they have a sick child at home?
Listen, if you have a sick child at home, if they're children, they should see the doctor. You want a doctor to evaluate them. But for anybody being sick, if they're all of a sudden not having fluids, they're so irritable that you just can't calm them. If they start turning a different color or they're not acting normal, go see the doctor because they can turn into something severe. A heart attack, cardiac arrest is a very rare complication, but it's not unheard of. And as we've seen, people are dying.
Dr. Saphier, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for
I will go
having me.
and get my flu shot.
I want to be there. I want to be there.
I'll let you give it to me, and you should go get it as well. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Saphier. All right, the showdown over President Trump's national emergency heating up as Democrats try to block it. So will it lead to the president's first veto? An update on the battle. Plus, Tim Tebow, Geraldo Rivera.
They taste like Fruit Loops. I mean, you guys win. Well done.
We're not supposed to eat on camera, but okay.
I was going to tell you, too, Carl's Jr., a West
Coast
establishment we're talking about, as a server, spends time in California. I love Carl's Jr.
What do you get?
I get a cheeseburger.
I get the one with the onion ring and the barbecue sauce and the bacon.
Oh,
spectacular.
So and now I'm going to get the donuts. Clearly, a good mashup.
It's a good sugar morning.
Well, now we have our sugar high. Let's get to some of the news of the day with David Webb. Welcome again to the couch. Look, our friend Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee is telling Republicans that they need to kind of come clean about what they're saying. Listen to this and we'll get your reaction.
People will stop me in the corridor, Republicans, and say, keep doing what you're doing.
Really?
Even senior Republicans, which of course would be heresy for them to say publicly, I don't need private confidences, misgivings anymore. We need public statements. We need people to take a stand. We need people to vote their conscience.
Imagine if our production staff run the Mueller probe. It would have been done after 10 minutes. They just cleared out our table like that.
But I kept mine.
Yeah,
I'm not giving up mine.
Do you actually believe Adam Schiff when he says
No.
Republicans are stopping me in the dark corners and halls of Congress to tell me that I'm doing the right thing?
No. Show me the videotape. Kind of like Jussie Smollett. Where's the videotape? Adam Schiff is the leader of the resistance for his part. I'm not going to believe him, and it serves the Democrats to separate the Republicans by planting a narrative. And one thing the Democrats and the party's good at, false narratives. So if you show me the videotape, I'll believe you.
All right. Well, we'll have to see if there's any videotape in the halls of Congress of that.
Yeah, I do. I got to get to this. Now, for a guy in radio, and I remember back in the 90s when I was doing radio, reparations was the thing that we heard about, and then that idea went away. We haven't heard that in a long time. Now, all of a sudden, with this 2020 field growing, we're hearing for the first time about calls bringing back the idea of reparations. This is a montage I want to play for you of three of those wannabe presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Julian Castro. Listen.
History of racism. We need to confront it head on.
We have a history of racism in America. People aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up.
This country would be better off if we did find a way to do that because of the injustice. What that would look like, I can't say that I have that all figured out, but I do believe that the country would be better off